All right, it's time for what I'm reading, and what I just finished reading. I just finished reading, and I mentioned this one before. She Come By It Natural by Sarah Smarsh, which is about Dolly Parton, but it focuses a lot on her upbringing and her background and how her music tends to speak to kind of disadvantaged women. It's a very short read, and it was pretty good. It didn't have as high of a Goodreads rating as I thought it would. I don't know. I guess I just figured because Dolly Parton, everybody would immediately love it. But it kind of had like a middling rating. I don't know. It was not really a biography. It was a bit of a biography, but also more kind of looking at her impact on feminism and feminism's interaction with her. So, I don't know, maybe that was why people were not as keen on that. I thought it was pretty good, though, for that sort of a thing. Then I also finished, and I didn't even mention this one, Murder Maps USA, Crime Scenes Revisited. This one was also a fairly short read. It is very heavily involved with pictures from the crime scenes and different things like that. So if you are not particularly interested in seeing, blood and gore and different things, I mean, they literally are using a lot of the actual footage from the time period, which would have been pre-World War II. I think this was Civil World of World War II. It's really specific. That almost seems like that should be part of a series, but I didn't find any series by this author. There wasn't. Adam Selzer did not have anything that would seem like this would be out of like World War II to modern to 2000 or Revolutionary War to Civil War. It didn't have anything like that, but this seems like it should be out of a set just because the way that it's numbered, but it's not. It was pretty good if you like true crime. It doesn't go into like huge in-depth stuff about the stories, but does talk about the stories from those times, and a lot of the primary source material is pretty interesting in that. But again, a faster read. And then another quick read. This is a fairy tales from the Brothers Grimm, but it's put out by Muppets Meet the Classics. I was a little surprised because they actually did keep the kind of dark aspect of a lot of the fairy tales with this. Like, they were killing off Muppets right and left, though they did present it as sort of the set piece was the fact that they were having a play of these fairy tales, so no one was actually getting killed. They were doing a play about them, and that's what they were all staged as, so there was sort of a window dressing in the whole thing, but it was cute. It was not anything groundbreaking, but it was a cute little read. If you like Grimm's fairy tales and things like that and the Muppets, it was a nice thing. What I have started reading, Lady Almena and the Real Downton Abbey. She married into the Carnarvon, I have a hard time pronouncing, Carnarvon family, which that is the Carnarvons that I had mentioned before. They are the Carnarvons who were part of Howard Carter and the digging up of King Tut and all that. And she married into this family. She had kind of a very interesting background because she was the illegitimate daughter of a Rothschild who was a incredibly wealthy banker, and her mother had been married before. Her mother was his mistress and was not accepted in society. She married into the Carnarvon family into incredible wealth from where she came from. So it's kind of an interesting thing that she was not your typical heiress at this time who was marrying. I mean, she was very, very pampered and brought up very, very wealthy because her father took responsibility for her and everything and put forth all the money for her and everything like that. But she was not really, she was an interesting marriage prospect, and she sort of was an interest. They weren't even sure if she would be accepted into polite society properly because of her background. So I've started that one. That was one of the ones that I picked up from Goodwill. Another one, the library, I tend to read the library, what they kind of have as their theme for the month. Well, their theme for the month is fairy tale retellings, which is kind of why the Muppet book ended up being read. Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I keep hearing about this one over and over and over, and I finally decided I should probably read it. This is her sort of version of a Grimm's fairy tale. There is kind of a dark element to it as well, and it seems to have a little bit of an Eastern European or Russian flavor with a lot of the naming and how they do different things in it. So I've started that one, not very far in it. And going along with my theme of kind of reading about aliens recently, I've started Dreamland by Phil Patton. Travels inside the secret world of Roswell in Area 51. And I can already tell with him that I don't really like his tone. I read a lot of nonfiction, and generally I don't run into this a huge amount, but sometimes I will run into nonfiction that the author, I can tell, thinks they are way superior to the subject that they are writing about. And that is very much a different. I talked about Mirage Men, which I also finished, but I didn't mention in here. But Mirage Men, his tone is very, not necessarily respectful, but these are his friends and these are people he knows. And even if he doesn't agree with them about different things, he is not dismissive of them or derogatory in any way. Phil Patton is a bit derogatory about some things already. I'm like 3 chapters in, and he's already kind of not necessarily making fun of the people involved in these kind of wacky situations and different things, but he is clearly has a certain thought process about them. He also seems to be making these offhanded comments a little bit even about the people he's talking about that seems to make you feel a certain way about them. Like, he keeps describing they go out in the desert and they've gotten near Area 51 and they're doing kind of the tourism-y thing, and he keeps talking about this one woman in the group as the fat girl. And I understand you may be trying to be edgy, or you just think that's a descriptor or whatever else, but I immediately raised an eyebrow when you start describing people in kind of those terms. He describes one of the guys there that, you know, maybe he shouldn't smile because he looks like Howdy Doody when he does. He just, and I'm like, all right, McLovin, I've seen the picture of you in there. Maybe you need to tone it down a little bit in your kind of derogatory way that you keep talking about people. So I can already tell I have a little bit of an issue with him already. And it's not that I'm even disagreeing with what he's talking about. I just have a little problem with how he's talking about it that I did not have with Mirage Men, mainly because he was much more respectful. Even if he didn't agree with people, he was much more respectful about what he was talking about and looked at it kind of in a different way. Patton has very much a sort of philosophy that I feel like he thinks that he's superior to what's going on, at least at this point, and that's a little off-putting. We'll see. We'll see if he changes that sort of tone he has at this point in time. I also will be participating in Horror Mayhem, which is the horror genre reading that we'll be doing in May, which I was already trying to read horror in April, but it kind of carried over and was different sort of things. I will be reading a number of ones that kind of Criminale had sort of mentioned as being possible reads. Some of them that I had been thinking about reading, one of them being The Elementals, which I've had for a long time and started reading and just never finished. That book, All the Blackened Teeth, I had been wanting to read for a while as well. And from our library, I just picked up it was the Woman in Black, I believe, is the one that I picked up there. Most of the ones are coming from him. I did buy one that I found online that I was just looking up indigenous horror authors, and one came up that kind of fit into this whole thing that was called Coyote Rage, that just looked kind of interesting, and so I will be trying to read that one as well in there. So we'll see. I will be doing the horror reading, and we'll see how much I get done. It's always kind of questionable. I don't like setting TBR sort of things for myself because I tend to automatically rebel against authority and not want to read what I have set for myself that I need to read on a deadline. So I kind of always set sort of a tentative one. So we'll see what gets done and what doesn't in the whole thing. So that's what I'm reading and what I've finished.